Hello, welcome to another video on tutoring with Becca. This one is all about fate in Romeo and Juliet, a major theme in the play, and one that also appears on GCSE exams. How does Shakespeare present fate in Romeo and Juliet, for example? So, fate in Romeo and Juliet, what is it? What is fate? Well, as I said, it is one of the most important themes in the play. From the start, from the prologue, Shakespeare presents the idea that Romeo and Juliet are doomed regardless of their choices. The infamous line, star-crossed lovers. And it is fate that guides the events of the play and shapes how the characters and the audience understand the story. So, fate in the prologue. This is where the theme is introduced before the play begins. As I said earlier, Romeo and Juliet are described as star-crossed lovers, indicating that their love is doomed by the stars or by the heavens, by God, by whoever, the great being above. And the reference to astrology reflects the belief in Shakespeare's times that stars could control the future. We've got Galileo Galilei in Italy, who was also born in the same year as Shakespeare, coincidentally. As an astronomer, we've also got Nicholas Copernicus, with his discovery, his invention and exploration of the heliocentric solar system, so the sun in the centre as opposed to Earth in the centre. The prologue tells the audience that the lovers will die, making the play's tragic ending inevitable. We are told, the audience is told, what will happen before the play even begins. And this early foreshadowing affects how the audience perceives the story. Every decision the characters make seems part of a path they cannot escape. There is nothing they can do to change their fate and their destiny. So Romeo's belief in fate, he frequently speaks as though his life is controlled by destiny. Before attending the Capulet party in Act 1, Scene 5, he says, "Some consequence yet hanging in the stars shall bitterly begin his fearful date with this night's revels." And this shows that Romeo senses misfortune is coming and attributes it to the stars. Romeo also believes that fate has determined the outcome. Even though he could technically make different choices, he doesn't have to go to the party, he doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to marry Juliet, he doesn't have to fight Tybalt, but he feels like he has to do those things because fate has determined the outcome. When he learns of Juliet's death at the beginning of Act 5, he calls himself Fortune's Fawn, suggesting that destiny has tricked or played with him in some particular way. And this highlights that Romeo feels caught in a web of fate that is beyond his control. Juliet and fate is also in the play. Juliet acknowledges fate throughout the play, and after falling in love with Romeo, she expresses concern about how quickly their relationship is developing. She says it is too rash, too unadvised, too sudden, which suggests that even she can see that this is moving too quickly, and maybe they should slow down. Her caution indicates that she senses their love may end badly. When she is told of Romeo's banishment, she exclaims, "Oh, Fortune, Fortune, all men call thee fickle." And like Romeo, Juliet attributes her suffering to a controlling force beyond her ability to influence. No, Juliet is 13, and again, Romeo is only 17. And certainly for Juliet specifically, how much control does she have of her own life? Both characters demonstrate the belief that their lives are shaped by powers outside their control. Fate and free will. Is it fate or is it free will in the play? The play raises these questions. Do Romeo and Juliet's ending, is it caused by the character's own choices, or is it caused by fate, like they believe so? The evidence for fate includes the prologue's warning. It includes several coincidental events, such as the plague preventing Friar Lawrence's letter from reaching Romeo, and things like that. Evidence of free will includes the fact that Romeo and Juliet's impulsive decision, such as marrying in secret. We've got Romeo killing Tybalt in an act of anger, frustration, and passionate revenge for the death of his best friend. And then we also have Juliet agreeing to take the risky potion in order to fake her death. And Shakespeare blurs the lines between fate versus free will, suggesting that while humans can make choices, their destinies may still be influenced by larger forces. Key moments for fate: the Capulet party for one, when Romeo attends only because a Capulet servant cannot read the guest list, which then allows him to enter the party and to meet Juliet. We have Tybalt's death. Romeo initially avoids fighting Tybalt, but after Mercutio's death compels him to act, resulting in banishment. So is that fate or is that free will? Was Mercutio's death also predetermined and destined by fate in order to lead to Romeo's banishment, Romeo wanting revenge, Romeo's banishment, Juliet faking her death, and then Romeo and Juliet ending taking their own lives anyway? We have the failed letter. Friar Lawrence's message explaining Juliet's plan does not reach Romeo because of a plague outbreak, which led Friar Francis to be in quarantine, causing Benvolio to head off to Mantua to tell Romeo that Juliet is dead, making Romeo think that she's actually dead. And then we have the final scene. The final scene when Romeo arrives at Juliet's tomb minutes before she wakes up. The slightest, the teeny tiniest change in timing could have prevented their deaths. Maybe Romeo struggles to open the poison. Maybe he's held up somewhere, somehow. Maybe the fight with Paris just beforehand takes slightly longer. Just something. Or if Juliet had woken up like 10 seconds earlier, they would have been alive at the same time. They would have seen each other, and then they could have escaped, as Friar Lawrence's plan would have worked. And these events demonstrate that small instances of fate have major consequences in the story. So why does fate matter? Why do we worry about fate and destiny in Romeo and Juliet? Well, as I said earlier, the 16th century was a time of astrology, and the influence of fortune was widely believed to be real. We are still very much in an era where there is a belief of witches and witchcraft, which we've seen especially with James I in the Jacobean era in the 1600s, so in the 17th century. And so that belief of witches, of evil, of fate, astrology, fortune, feeds into this belief of fate, predetermined destiny. By portraying Romeo and Juliet as victims of fate, Shakespeare emphasises that forces govern human life beyond individual control. And the play encourages the audience to consider whether tragedy could have been avoided through different choices. Certainly a 21st century audience will see this. We'll see the different choices the characters could have made. Romeo didn't have to go to the party at the Capulet ball. They didn't have to get married when they did. The feud itself, and we'll come on to the feud at some point, I think, but the feud itself also feeds into this fate. Romeo and Juliet have no control over their fate, over the feud whatsoever. It started long ago, this ancient grudge, and it is very much their parents, their fathers, who feed into this feud that led them to getting married in secret. So if there was no feud, they wouldn't have to get married in secret. And this combination of fate and personal choices makes the play certainly more tragic and a little bit more complex than just, well, there were two teenagers who fell in love. And so we get fate and free will together throughout the play. From the prologue, the audience knows that Romeo and Juliet are doomed, and the events of the play reinforce the power of destiny. At the same time, however, the characters' impulsive actions contribute to their deaths. Romeo is a very impulsive, passionate character. If you watch his reaction to Mercutio's death, especially in the Zeffirelli film from 1969, there is this whole group of guys who were trying to hold back Romeo from fighting Tybalt, who has fled because Tybalt has also killed somebody. Shakespeare uses the interplay of fate and free will to create a tragedy that feels inevitable while remaining grounded in human behaviour. And fate drives the overall story, but it is the characters' decisions that bring the prophecy to completion, the prophecy that they will be star-crossed lovers, that Romeo and Juliet will die. Their deaths do bring an end to the feud. However, it is their deaths along with 4 other people who also bring the feud to an end and the prophecy to completion. Okay, I hope that has been useful. A little bit about fate in Romeo and Juliet. Thank you for watching. If you want to know any more about Romeo and Juliet, I have a blog, tutoringwithbecca.co.uk/blog, with lots of articles on Romeo and Juliet and other GCSE texts. Thank you for watching.